Delve into the brutal past where justice was served with an equal measure of punishment, a crude form of an eye for an eye. Imagine a time when if you knocked out someone's teeth, yours would be knocked out in return. This style of punishment didn't stop at physical harm, it extended to the death penalty. Picture a looter, caught in the act, being thrown into the very house they ignited, or a burglar hanged at the scene of their crime, a chilling reflection of how justice was served during ancient times. Next, we journey to ancient Greece where the horrifying execution method of the Brazen Bull came into existence. Imagine a hollow metallic sculpture of a bull, large enough to hold a human inside. A victim would be placed within this monstrous creation, and a roaring fire would be lit beneath it. The metal would heat up, and the trapped individual would be slowly, agonizingly roasted alive. But the horror doesn't stop there. The bull was ingeniously rigged with a system of pipes that transformed the screams of the suffering victim into the sounds of a bull's mooing. This gruesome spectacle was designed as much for the entertainment of the spectators as it was for the punishment of the condemned, a terrifying testament to the cruelty of ancient civilizations. From the annals of ancient Roman history emerges a gruesome punishment, death by molten metal. This was not a punishment for the faint of heart. The guilty party would first be strangled with a soft rope, considered a more humane choice to avoid causing additional discomfort with coarse material. This initial act, carried out by two witnesses integral to the case, was meant to induce the victim to gasp for air. And in that desperate moment, when the condemned would be struggling for a breath of life, molten lead would be poured down their throat. This lethal cocktail of strangulation and molten metal made for a horrifying spectacle, a death that was as brutal as it was shocking. The human capacity for cruelty knew no bounds, as we move on to the horrifying methods of flaying and the waist chop. Flaying was a torturous procedure requiring a knife's precision, starting with incisions on the legs, buttocks, and torso. The skin was then meticulously peeled away, with the aim of keeping it as intact as possible. This gruesome method of execution was favored in various parts of the world, from ancient Rome to medieval England and even the Ottoman Empire. The waist chop, on the other hand, was a slow and excruciating death sentence popular in China. The executioner, armed with a large bladed instrument, would slice the prisoner in half at the waist. The technique was designed to miss the vital organs, prolonging the inevitable demise. It wasn't until the 18th century that this brutal practice was formally abolished. The depths of human cruelty seemed to know no bounds. Perhaps one of the most infamous methods of execution, crucifixion, was a slow and excruciating way to die. In this process, the condemned individual was first stripped of their garments, leaving them in a state of vulnerability. They were then subjected to harsh scourging and beatings, an ordeal that often left them weak and on the brink of collapse. But the torment did not end there. Next, the victim was forced to carry a heavy wooden cross towards their final destination, the place of their execution. This journey was a grueling test of endurance, a cruel spectacle designed to maximize their suffering. Upon reaching the execution site, the victim was nailed onto the cross. Their hands and feet were pierced with large iron nails, affixing them to the timber. They were left hanging there, exposed to the elements and the ridicule of bystanders. Soldiers and onlookers could freely torment the victim, adding insult to their immense physical pain. A testament to the brutal realities of ancient punishment. The annals of history hold even more horrific tales of execution, such as the boats and dismemberment by trees. The boats was a punishment that began with the condemned being placed inside a boat. Another identical boat was then sealed on top of it, creating a shell with the man's arms, legs, and head protruding. The prolonged agony was heightened by the exposure to the elements and the relentless onslaught of insects. Shifting gears to another equally chilling method, we have dismemberment by trees. This was a brutal form of martial discipline introduced by the Emperor Aurelian in the 3rd century. Roman soldiers found guilty of having affairs with other men's wives were subjected to this gruesome penalty. They were tied to 2 bent trees which were then released, causing the unfortunate individual to be ripped apart. These methods were as inventive as they were cruel. Finally, we examine one of the most unusual and brutal methods of execution, dropping onto rocks. This method was as much about public humiliation as it was about the physical pain. The offender would first be locked into a public pillory outside the town hall, stripped of all dignity. They would stand there totally naked for nearly 3 weeks. But the humiliation didn't end there. They were covered in honey and milk, a sweet and sticky concoction that attracted bees, flies, and other insects. The offender would become a living, breathing feast for these creatures. It was a slow, agonizing torture that would last for days. Then, when the time was right, the final act of this macabre play would unfold. The prisoner, weakened and humiliated, would be wrapped in a woman's robe and pushed off a cliff, to meet a violent end on the rocks below. A gruesome end to a list of history's most painful deaths. In the shadowy corridors of the past, humanity has devised some of the most brutal methods of execution. From the savage eye for an eye principle, to the horrific Brazen Bull, and the abhorrent practice of flaying, our history is marked by these gruesome tales. Even the Crucifixion, a symbol of sacrifice and redemption for some, was a form of slow, agonizing death. These chilling tales serve as a stark reminder of the dark side of human history.